now recognize myself for an opening statement.
Mr. Chairman, point of
Last
parliamentary
Friday,
inquiry.
without explanation, Attorney General William Barr announced that Jeffrey Berman, the United States Attorney for the Southern District of New York, was, quote, stepping down, unquote. This was, of course, untrue. Mr. Berman had not resigned. In a statement, Mr. Berman made clear that he had no intention of resigning and every intention of moving forward with his work without delay or interruption. He emphasized that point. He wanted to stay on the job to ensure that his work would continue unimpeded. In order to understand the stakes in this standoff, it is important to note that the work of Mr. Berman's office has included a number of criminal investigations aimed at individuals close to President Trump. Among them, the President's attorney, Michael Cohen, the President's inaugural committee, and Rudy Giuliani, the President's current counsel, campaign advisor, and direct line to Kiev. On Saturday, Mr. Barr attempted to fire Mr. Berman directly. Even then, Mr. Berman resisted. Only when he was certain that his deputy, a qualified career prosecutor, would take his place as acting U.S. attorney, did he relent and step aside. So what are we to make of these events? If this had been an isolated incident, if the Attorney General had simply misjudged the situation and thought that Mr. Berman would go quietly, then we might chalk up this episode to simple miscommunication and incompetence. But make no mistake, this was not an isolated incident. Early this year, after the President's associate, Roger Stone, was convicted of obstructing justice, Mr. Barr overruled his career prosecutors and recommended a lighter sentence for President Trump's friend. One of those prosecutors, Mr. Zelinsky, will testify today about that experience.
I was privileged to serve in the Department of Justice under 2 Republican and 1 Democratic president, and I am here because I believe that William Barr poses the greatest threat in my lifetime to our rule of law and to public trust in it. That is because he does not believe in its core principle that no person is above the law. Instead, since taking office, he has worked to advance his lifelong conviction that the president should hold virtually autocratic powers. That includes immunity from nearly all checks and balances and being able to accord special treatment to himself and his friends. Another 30 seconds. In closing, it needs to be said that Bill Barr does regularly lie in ways that impact official action. Along with his continuing media project to make Americans believe that the FBI conspired against Donald Trump, his statements about the Mueller report, Jeffrey Berman's supposed resignation, and Barr's own role in the events in Lafayette Park come quickly to mind. But to me, Barr's crowning dishonesty is the portrait of Edward Levy that a recent New York Times article showed hanging on the wall of his conference room, as though the current incumbent has anything.
Regular order. The witness will conclude.
Regular order is right.
We're way beyond regular order.
The witness will continue.
Can I have one more sentence, Your Honor?
By all means.
Okay. But to me, Barr's crowning dishonesty is the portrait of Edward Levy that a recent
Mr. Chairman, I would ask
Times
that the sergeant at arms be called upon to stop the disruption of this meeting. I can't hear this witness. This is a very important witness.
Yeah, well, he's way beyond
And the
his
chair
time.
has
And if
the
there are no
authority-
rules about
the
when
chair
people
has the
can talk,
authority, does
there's
he
no
not?
rules about when you can make noise.
The gentleman makes a
Doesn't the
good
chair-
point, and the chair will enforce the 5-minute rule. Witness will proceed.
Chair is not enforcing the 5-minute
The
rule.
witness will conclude.
Mr. Chairman, this is outrageous. Do you have no respect for the rules whatsoever?
The witness will conclude.
He's 2 minutes beyond concluding, and you don't let us have that kind of time. You gavel down immediately. You're being grossly unfair. This man had a
witness will
written
conclude.
statement, and he knew to cut it to 5 minutes. He couldn't do it. Either we have rules or we don't.
The gentleman will suspend. The witness will conclude.
conference room, as though the current incumbent has
Regular
anything.
order. Regular order. The witness will conclude.
Regular order is right.
We're way beyond regular order.
The witness will continue.
Can I have one more sentence, Your
By
Honor?
all means.
Okay. But to me, Barr's crowning dishonesty is the portrait of Edward Levy that a
Mr.
recent
Chairman, I would
New York
ask
Times-
that the sergeant at arms
The witness
be
will
called
conclude.
upon to stop the disruption of this meeting. I can't hear this witness. This is a very important witness.
Yeah, well, he's way beyond
The
his
chair
time.
has
And if
the
there are no
authority-
rules about
the
when
chair
people
has
can
the
talk,
authority, does
there's
he
no
not?
rules about when you can make noise.
The gentleman makes a
Doesn't the
good
chair-
point, and the chair will enforce the 5-minute rule. Witness will proceed.
Authorized under the rules of this committee.
It certainly is authorized under the rules of this committee.
Well, then, cannot the chair call in the sergeant at arms to maintain order when a member of this panel
We'll
is out of
wit-
order and
we'll
disrupts the
move
meeting?
on to the next witness.
Parliamentary inquiry, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Elias.
Parliamentary inquiry, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Elias. is
Parliamentary
recognized.
inquiry, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Elias.
Parliamentary point of order, Mr. Chairman.
There is no point of order.
How do you know I've not said one? Here we go
The
again.
gentleman is completely out of order, Mr.
The
Chairman.
gentleman will state his point of order.
Point of order is according to the House rules, a House chairman cannot capriciously determine the 5-minute rule at the whim of what he wants. It has to be fairly and impartially applied. That is the spirit of the House rules, and that is not what has happened.
You'll apply it fairly?
We are applying the 5-minute rule as provided by the House rules.
So you're ruling on my point of order?
The gentleman has not stated the point of order.
I did say the point of order. I stated the point of order is the rules are being violated by a capricious chairman who is not following the rules of the House by arbitrarily deciding when the 5-minute rule will be applied and when it will not be applied.
You have not stated a cognizable point of order. The chairman has discretion.
Mr. Chairman, you've not stated a recognizable way of running a committee in 18 months. So, I mean,
Gentlemen,
let's determine it.
The gentleman will suspend. The gentleman has not stated a cognizable point of order.
What I saw was that Roger Stone was being treated differently from every other defendant. He received breaks that are, in my experience, unheard of, and all the more so for a defendant in his circumstances, a defendant who lied to Congress, who remained unrepentant, and who made threats against a judge and a witness in his case. And what I heard repeatedly was that this leniency was happening because of Stone's relationship to the president, that the acting U.S. Attorney for the District of Columbia was receiving heavy pressure from the highest levels of the Department of Justice, and that his instructions to us were based on political considerations. And I was told that the acting U.S. Attorney was giving Stone a break because he was afraid of the President of the United States. I believe that was wrong, and together with my fellow line prosecutors, I immediately and repeatedly said so. Unfortunately, our objections were not heeded. I resigned because following orders would have violated the oath I swore when I took my job. To be clear, my concern is not with the sentence Mr. Stone received. I'm not here to criticize Jackson's sentence or her reasoning. My concern is about process. The Department of Justice treated Roger Stone differently from everyone else, and I was told that the department cut Roger Stone a break because of his relationship to the president. I take no satisfaction in publicly criticizing the actions of the Department of Justice, where I have spent most of my legal career. I have always been, and I remain proud to be, an assistant United States attorney. It pains me to describe these events, but as Judge Jackson said in this case, truth still matters, and so I'm here today to tell you the truth.